Who do you say that I am? It's a deceptively simple question. Who do you say that I am? For as long as the Christian church has been in existence, questions about the identity of Jesus have enticed the minds of theologians and historians. Even artists have taken up this debate, each offering their own distinct visual representation of what they think Jesus looked like. If we had time, we could go through some of those, but we of course don't really know what Jesus really looked like, although some of their representations are probably closer to the truth than others. But it's fair to say, too, that for as diverse as the visual answers to this question are, the theological ones are just as varied. Turn on the TV to certain megachurch pastors, and the Jesus you'll hear about often sounds more like a self-help book or a magic wish-granting genie. Still, other depictions of Jesus by the Christian right or the Christian left would seek to align him with one political party or the other, with everything that that entails. So what about the Bible? Surely that will give us a more definitive answer to this question, or so we might think. And yet we have 4 different Gospels with 4 very different portrayals of Jesus, plus the 23 other books of the New Testament that all offer their own unique take and insights and highlight their own particularities about who they believe Jesus to be. So maybe we just have to face the fact that there is no one simple answer to this question. After all, even today's gospel reading, these, 18 verses? No, 11 verses, I can't count. Today's gospel reading itself offers 4 different answers. John the Baptist, or Elijah, or another prophet, or the Messiah. And just as easily as Jesus poses the question, he moves even more quickly to shut down the conversation entirely, sternly ordering his disciples to tell no one about him. And technically, Jesus never really even confirms or denies Peter's answer. Who do you say that I am? Maybe another way of posing this question, as one biblical commentator put it this week, is, who will you say that you are? Indeed, Jesus' identity is very much wrapped up in our own as followers of Jesus. Try as artists and theologians and historians might, we can never fully know what Jesus actually looked like or said or did. Sure, we have the witness of the 4 Gospels and the other writings of the New Testament, and that paints a pretty good picture, but evidently not clear enough. For indeed, interpretations throughout years and years of Christian belief and practice have given way to innumerable divisions within the church. That same commentator continues and says, who you say Jesus is who you have decided to be. Or maybe it's the other way around. Who we are, who we have decided to be, what we have decided to believe is who we claim Jesus to be. Superimposing our own beliefs, for better, but usually for worse, on Jesus. This is a dangerous game that has led to churches often exclusionary and harmful attitudes towards marginalized communities throughout the years. When the church answers Jesus' question, who do you say that I am, out of its own self-interests and beliefs, it has historically resulted in some pretty misguided, so-called biblical arguments in support of slavery and segregation, against the leadership of women in our pulpits, and even opposing the full inclusion of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender persons in the life of this church. Anne Lamott, one of my favorite writers, says it this way: "You can safely assume you've created God in your own image when it turns out that God hates all the same people you do." We can safely assume we've made Jesus into who we say Jesus is, when suddenly it seems like Jesus is not all that different from us. And so with that in mind, Peter's identification of Jesus as the Messiah is less a confession of faith or giving the right answer, even though we can step back and see the whole gospel. But in this moment, I think it's more a revealing of what Peter wants Jesus to be. Following in the popular Jewish religious thought of his day, Peter yearned for a Messiah, a deliverer, a specially anointed king from the royal line of David, ancient Israel's most respected and powerful king. Descended from David, this new king was expected to powerfully vanquish Israel's oppressors, to free them from the oppression and the occupation of the Roman Empire, and to restore Israel's status as an independent and divinely chosen people. No wonder Peter had this idea in mind: you are the Messiah. But that's far from the kind of Messiah that Jesus is. And he sternly rebukes Peter, even calling out his proposal as satanic and evil. Maybe it's a bit harsh, but it certainly gets the point across. The role of the Messiah that Jesus has in mind is much different. The Messiah that Jesus claims to be is a Messiah who takes up his cross, who undergoes great suffering, rejection, and even death. This is Jesus' answer to his own question: who do you say that I am? This is the Messiah who suffers and gives up his life for the sake of others, who shows God's great love for God's people and God's creation by offering his very self for our life and our flourishing. This is also the answer to the flip side of that original question: who will you say that you are? ELCA pastor Elizabeth Johnson, who serves as a missionary in Cameroon, offers these words. She says, "Jesus speaks of losing our lives for his sake and for the sake of the gospel. Taking up our cross means being willing to suffer the consequences of following Jesus faithfully, whatever those consequences might be. It means putting Jesus' priorities and purposes ahead of our own comfort or security. It means being willing to lose our lives by spending them for others, using our time, resources, gifts, and energy so that others might experience God's love made known in Jesus Christ." This passage is an invitation to discipleship, to the way of following Jesus. But it doesn't promise that that life of following Jesus will be easy or without challenges. In the years before 2009, before the ELCA officially began ordaining and consecrating openly LGBTQ pastors and deacons, many Lutheran clergy who did not identify as straight or fit within these norms either served closeted, withholding their identity from those with the power to remove them from office, or they were barred from serving entirely, or chose not to. A few, however, chose to serve the church openly, at great risk. And as an act of holy disobedience, the first 3 openly gay and lesbian pastors in the ELCA, Ruth Frost, Phyllis Zilhart, and Jeff Johnson, were ordained extraordinarily. extraordinarily outside the bounds of official church policy. This was in 1990, and it promptly led to the removal of the congregations that had called them from membership in the ELCA. In the years that followed, more and more gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender pastors and deacons were ordained and consecrated extraordinarily, served their congregations and their ministry settings openly, and faced similar consequences until the church finally started to catch up. These early instigators of a movement toward full inclusion knew this life of discipleship well. They knew what it meant to take up their cross, to suffer the consequences of following Jesus faithfully, following the example of a Messiah who constantly reached out to the margins, toppling the walls meant to keep those people out, and subverting boundaries every step of the way. These faithful servants of the church knew what it meant to put Jesus' priorities and the mission of the gospel ahead of even their own safety and the comfort and the status quo of the institutional church. Who do you say that I am? If we profess the church to be the body of Christ, we need look no further than these early instigators and other faithful witnesses like them to the gospel of radical inclusivity and love and justice for all. These are the body of Christ. These are the answer to who Jesus is, because they are the followers of Jesus. Following in their witness, following in the witness of Jesus, our Messiah. This is our invitation. Who do you say that Jesus is? Who will you say that you are? Amen.
Amen.